Welcome into Steelers Talk. I am your host, Jack Sperry, and today we have a great slate of Steelers news and rumors to cover with you guys right here on YouTube. First, we're going to talk about Michael Thomas, who Pro Football Focus has linked to the Pittsburgh Steelers as a potential free agency target for the black and gold. Then we'll go over Bleacher Report's trade guide for the 2024 offseason for the Steelers. They list 3 potential trade assets and 3 potential trade targets for the Pittsburgh Steelers this offseason. Pretty interesting stuff there by Bleacher Report. And then we'll finish off today's show with ESPN's QB target for the Pittsburgh Steelers in the NFL draft. They have them taking this quarterback in the 3rd round, so maybe try to guess who they have the Steelers taking. So now stick around for a juicy rumor from ESPN like we just said, because let me tell you, man, this is going to be interesting what Brooke Pryor from ESPN had to say about which quarterback the Steelers are going to go target in this year's NFL draft. But first, help us beat the Browns, okay? Because Matthew Peterson, the host of the Browns Report here at Chat Sports, has been running his mouth when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is what he had to say this week about the Steelers fans. The Steelers have the softest fans in the entire National Football League. They're constantly crying about T.J. Watt not winning Defensive Player of the Year and always talk about how the league hates them, even with 6 Super Bowl titles. What a joke. I'm willing to bet a steak dinner we get more likes on today's video. Guys, I need this steak dinner right now from the Browns host, Matthew Peterson. He's a good friend of mine, but listen, man, he's never beaten the Steelers Talk family here. We're not going to let it start today. So make sure you click that thumbs up icon and help us beat the Browns today and help me win a steak dinner from Browns host, Matthew Peterson. So now, is Michael Thomas the perfect fit for the Pittsburgh Steelers in free agency? Pro Football Focus and their staff seems to think so, and they have linked him as a potential fit for the black and gold in 2024. This is what the Pro Football Focus staff had to say about Michael Thomas to the Steelers. Pittsburgh brought Elandon Roberts aboard to serve as a big slot possession receiver in 2023, and while his lack of production was not entirely his own doing, perhaps the Steelers take another swing with Thomas coming in as the number 3 alongside Deontay Johnson and George Pickens. Moving Johnson and Pickens into the slot more to help create more separation on outbreakers like corner routes, an area Pickens excelled in 2023, adds more versatility to the whole unit. Now, I'd be fine with Michael Thomas. I think that he hasn't played high-level football in the last several years, but I think that he's a talented individual, bigger receiver, good blocker, someone that Arthur Smith would really like. But if I'm going to pick a receiver in free agency, I think I'm going to pick Tyler Boyd. Pittsburgh native, Pitt Panther, would really love to come to this organization, might even take a little bit of a pay cut to be able to play for the black and gold, and he's got good size, can play versatility. They're playing the slot and outside. I think he's a perfect fit for this team, and if I'm going to pick one free agent wide receiver to go out and get, I'm going to pick the Pittsburgh native, Tyler Boyd. Now let me know down there in the comments section, who is your guy? Which NFL free agent do you want the Pittsburgh Steelers to target this offseason? Is it Michael Thomas? Is it Tyler Boyd? Is it L'Jarius Sneed? Is it Jalen Johnson? Let me know down there in the comments section which NFL free agent you would love to see the Steelers target this offseason. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's show, so YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. When that happens, take advantage of that time by answering today's pinned question. So now let's get into this trade guide that Bleacher Report put out for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2024. And let's start with the trade assets that they see for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year, which is the number 20 overall pick in the 1st round. You got Patrick Peterson, the defensive back, and Chukwuma Okorafor, the offensive tackle. This is what Bleacher Report had to say about the trade assets here in Pittsburgh. If they can find a suitor for Chukwuma Okorafor, it would make a lot of sense to send him to a team willing to part with a pick. He is a cap casualty candidate anyway, who would clear $8.7 million in cap space and lost his job to Broderick Jones. Patrick Peterson is a trade asset for similar reasons. He moved to safety the final few games of the season, and trading him would clear just under $7 million. They also have the 20th overall selection and 7 picks in the draft if they want to move up or down the board. Now, when it comes to Patrick Peterson, we'll start with him. I think he's moving to safety, and I think the Steelers are going to keep him on the roster. I think that they value the leadership that he brings to the locker room. I think they appreciate and value his veteran savvy and his wisdom in that locker room. So I do think they're going to try to keep him around, and I think they're going to play him alongside Minkah Fitzpatrick at safety in 2024. And then when it comes to Chukwuma Okorafor, good luck moving him, man. He got benched last year. He's had some behavior issues, all these different things, has not played good football in several years at this point. And I just don't know if anybody is going to be willing to part ways with him. Now, maybe there's a sucker out there that will give you a 7th-round pick for somebody with starting experience in the National Football League. In that case, I would absolutely take that. If you could get a 7th-round pick and get him off your books for 2024, I would absolutely take that. But if you can't get a sucker to trade for him, I would just cut Chukwuma Okorafor this offseason. If you want to check out my thoughts on the trade candidates for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I list out 6 trade candidates for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2024 after the hiring of Arthur Smith. So if you want to check that out and see which players on the Steelers roster might get dealt this offseason, I'm going to put the link in the comments and description of today's show. Now, coming up here, I got more Steelers trade targets to discuss here from Bleachers Report. They got 3 trade targets for the Steelers to consider this offseason. But before I get into that, let's have a word from our sponsor here at PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use our code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100 today. If you want this year's Super Bowl to be even more interesting, you can get started with our friends at PrizePicks today. And what PrizePicks is that it's a skill-based, real money, daily fantasy sports game. And if you're wondering how that works, here's how you play. You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they'll go for more or less than their PrizePicks projection, and you can even win up to 25 times your money on any entry. So my entry for Super Bowl 58 between the 49ers and the Chiefs, I'm going to take the more on Christian McCaffrey rush yards. I'm going to take the more on Travis Kelce receiving yards. And the same thing with the other tight end, George Kittle. I'm going to take the more. I'm an optimist. I'm going to take the more on these 3 guys, but you can get your picks in now when you go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use our code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100 today. At PrizePicks, you aren't competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks that are just looking to take advantage of you. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use our code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100 today. That's code CLNS at prizepicks.com/CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100 today. So now let's talk about the top trade targets for the Pittsburgh Steelers. According to Bleachers Report, an early draft pick in the first round, so they're saying use that number 20 overall pick to trade up. Ted Karras, the center from the Cincinnati Bengals, or Jonathan Jones, the cornerback from the New England Patriots. Let's start with Ted Karras here and what they had to say about going and getting the Bengals center. Ted Karras is a solid veteran center who would upgrade the offensive line, and the Bengals would shed $6.4 million in cap space. Then when it comes to Jonathan Jones, this is what BR had to say. Jonathan Jones is 30 years old, and the Patriots are in rebuild mode. They might be willing to part with the veteran if it gives them an extra pick in the draft and saves them some money. And then talking about trading up potentially in this year's NFL draft, Bleacher Report says then there's the idea of trading for an early draft pick that could either be used to take one of the top tackle prospects in the draft or a quarterback to compete with Kenny Pickett. So first, I wanted to address Ted Karras, the center from the Cincinnati Bengals here. He's the 15th overall center, according to Pro Football Focus, in terms of their grading system in 2023. If you trade for him, you're going to be on the hook for just over $6 million, so he is affordable. And I do think that he's a good fit for Arthur Smith's offense. I won't say he's the best athlete in the world, but he's a good enough athlete to play in this system. I think there might be some better, more athletic options out there in free agency and the draft. But if they ended up trading like a 5th-round pick or something like that for Ted Karras, I definitely would not be crying about it. Then we get to Jonathan Jones here, and this is one really does intrigue me because his Pro Football Focus grade was almost top 20 in the National Football League. He's played a ton of press coverage throughout his career. His cap hit would be about $9 million, but you look at the free agency market right now, and that would be a really good price compared to guys like L'Jarius Sneed and Jalen Johnson. And I think he's a great fit for the Steelers defense because you look at Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin, they want to play a lot of press coverage. And Joey Porter Jr. already excels at that. but the other side needs to be accounted for there, and I think Jonathan Jones would be a really, really good fit for the Pittsburgh Steelers as their CB2 moving forward. And I do like both of these trade targets for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, would I maybe rather go out and get a center in free agency or the draft? Yeah, but like I said, I'm not going to cry about it if the Steelers end up trading a day 3 draft pick for a starting center like Ted Karras. Now, when it comes to trading up or trading down in this year's NFL draft, I think that's an interesting discussion. I don't think they're going to be trading up. Okay, and the reason for that is I don't think they're going to try and draft a quarterback early this year. I think they're probably either going to go get a veteran like Justin Fields or Russell Wilson, or they're going to stick with Kenny Pickett as their starter, most likely sticking with Pickett. So with that being said, I don't think they're trading up for a tackle. And then when it comes to trading down, I think it's an interesting discussion, especially if they want to go get a center. But let me know down there in the comments section, would you rather trade up or trade down in round 1 of the 2024 NFL draft? Type U if you would trade up, or type D if you would trade down. Right now we get to the ESPN story here where they have the Pittsburgh Steelers taking Jordan Travis, a quarterback out of Florida State, in the 3rd round. And this, of course, comes from Brooke Pryor, the Steelers reporter there at ESPN, and this is what she has to say about this pick. At his end-of-season news conference, Coach Mike Tomlin said Kenny Pickett will resume his status as the team's starting quarterback in 2024, but will have competition. Travis's season ended prematurely with a left lower leg injury that will likely hamper him in the pre-draft evaluation period, but taking a swing on him could have a big upside for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Travis is undersized, but his mobility, playmaking ability, and pocket presence make him an intriguing prospect in a league that increasingly values quarterbacks with versatile skill sets to run the offense. And they have the Steelers taking Travis in the 3rd round at number 84 overall. And to me, this is too rich for a guy like Travis, because he is undersized. I don't think he's a particularly good mental processor. Don't think he's a particularly good decision maker. And although he can get outside the pocket, he has a decent feel for the pocket. I still think he has a long way to go. And then you add the injury on top of that, and I just think 3rd round is going to be way too high for him. Now, if they drafted him in the 5th round, things change for me. I think that's a good lottery ticket to spend because, like Brooke says, he's a really talented athlete. But I'm not going to spend a 3rd round draft pick, which could be used on getting a potential starter year 1, on a guy that is definitely not going to start year 1, and you're kind of just hoping is going to develop in the long run. So for me, I do think drafting Travis that high is a bit too high and a bit too rich for my blood. Now, what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comment section. Would you take Jordan Travis from Florida State in round 3, or do you agree with me and think that's a bit too rich? Type yes if you would take him, or type no if you wouldn't. Here's a shout out to some of the people that followed me on Twitter this week. So shout out to Brock, Ryan, Seth, Mr. Hercules 007, and Brydens. If you guys want a shout out on a future edition of Steelers Talk, make sure you give me a follow at Jack_Sperry. And of course, make sure you click that subscribe button to never miss any of our Steelers news and rumors coverage throughout the 2024 offseason.